Welcome to the world of exploration. Welcome to the world of learning. Let's start exploring. Let's start learning. Today we are going to discuss about the Victorian literature. The Victorian literature is the literature that evolved in the period of Queen Victoria. Very, very important. As the name clearly suggests, that it developed during the age of Queen Victoria. The literature of this era was a mix of romanticism and realism. So, the literature of this era was a mix of romanticism as well as realism. Very important. It was a potpourri of romanticism and realism, that's what we can say. This age is great in both poetry and prose, and when we talk about this particular age, it is great in both poetry as well as prose. It's not only about being good in poetry or being good for prose, but it is both. It is great in both these cases. The greatest poet of the Victorian period was Alfred Lord Tennyson. So one of the greatest poet of Victorian period was Alfred Lord Tennyson. Alfred's poetry was romantic and reflected the age perfectly with its mixture of social conviction and religious confusion. So there was social conviction, the mixture of social conviction as well as religious confusion, as we have discussed earlier as well, that there was a lot of religious confusion that prevailed in all ages, right? Then we talk about T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot described him as the greatest master of metrics as well as melancholia. So when we talk about T.S. Eliot described him as the greatest Alfred Lord Tennyson as the greatest master of metrics as well as of melancholia. Tennyson's famous works include poetry of short lyrics, break. So this is the name of the poem. Tennyson's famous work include poetry of short lyrics such as break, and the charge of the light brigade, tears, idle tears, and crossing the bar. Very important. He also wrote blank verse poetry. So he also wrote blank verse poetry. Including Ulysses, Idylls of the King, and Tithonus. Other famous poets of the Victorian age were Robert Browning and his wife Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Dramatic monologues were Browning's specialty. W.S. Gilbert was famous in this era too and was the writer of comic verses. His most celebrated work is his 14 comic operas. Very important. America also produced two greatest poets of the 19th century, Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman. The novels of this era were also doing great. Children's literature like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll came about too. Charles Dickens became the most famous novelist from this era. His famous works include Bleak House, Oliver Twist, please underline it, Bleak House, Oliver Twist, A Tale of Two Cities, it should be TWO, of Two Cities, etc. Thomas Hardy was a realist and a prominent figure of this era, and is most famously known for his Mayor of the Castor Bridge. Writers of Victorian age include William Makepeace Thackeray, the Bronte sisters, Emily, Charlotte and Anne, Elizabeth Gaskell, Anthony Trollope, H.G. Wells, Robert Louis Stevenson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry James, and others. Notable works of this time are The Princess Casa Massima, The Time Machine, Kidnapped, Jane Eyre, Sherlock Holmes, Dorothy, Leaves of Grass, etc. In the next session, we will be discussing about the present age and history of English literature. That is from 1901 till present times.